I'm a Welshman on the internet, and because I am an internet Cymro, I thought I had better weigh in on this whole book talk and romantasy using Welsh culture wrong thing. So here's my halfpenny worth on it. So if you're new to the channel, hello, I'm Jimmy, and I'm an archaeologist, and most of my videos are based on things like the medieval period, material culture, depictions of Vikings in popular culture, that kind of thing. I do Viking reenactment, and that's where a lot of my videos go. But I am on a channel called The Welsh Viking, and as well as doing Viking reenactment, I am Welsh. I'm a Cymro, and as a Cymro, I'm fairly used to some of the standard misrepresentations of Wales and Welsh and Welsh culture. Welsh is a difficult language and only has consonants and all those other tired, boring things that unoriginal Anglos tend to come up with. And the whole recent furore on the internet over Welsh and Welsh culture being misappropriated and misused by fantasy authors struck me in two ways simultaneously. The first way was I was disappointed and annoyed that this is happening. And the second one was, how is this news? This is not news to me, this is not news to most Welsh-speaking people, this is not news to most Welsh people, this is certainly not news for Irish people or Gaelic people in Scotland, or probably even Manx people, or Cornish people, and it's because Pan-Celticism is a thing, and Pan-Celticism is this weird habit people have of lumping all of the Celtic cultures together, because they have this idea that because there are connections and similarities between, for example, Scottish, Irish and Welsh culture and languages, they are all basically just the same thing. And they're not. They're really not. I can guarantee you that because I'm from one of them. And it kind of I think it tires people out from these cultures a lot. It tires me out because whenever I see a fantasy book that has elements of Irish mythology in it or Welsh mythology in it, I generally go in assuming that they've got it wrong, that they have done no real homework on it, and every now and then I'll be surprised, but most of the time that is the case. Most of the time it's lazy and it's just tiring to see that. It's like if somebody gets your name wrong every time they see you, or gets your birthday wrong, or misgenders you every time they see you, it just tires you out. It takes your energy away. And there are authors that have done the opposite. There are authors that have done good work on it, and just from the bookshelf behind me, here's one. Professor Tolkien did a pretty good job of being inspired by Welsh. The elves speak their languages, and good second-hand book smell. It's pretty clear to a Welsh speaker that the languages of the elves are influenced by Welsh, and indeed the naming conventions in The Lord of the Rings, like Arwen is definitely inspired by a Welsh name. There are definitely houses in Wales called Lothlorien, and I guarantee that 90% of them are probably Airbnbs owned by English people. Diana Wynne-Jones does a really good job in Hywel's Moving Castle. Hywel, the anglicisation of the Welsh name Hywel, as in Hywel Dda, King Hywel the Good. She actually critiques this trope in this book, and a lot of the people talking about this, like Professor Feeney from Glasgow Uni, that I used to be affiliated with, not the professor, the uni. Professor Feeney has been talking about sensitivity and respect in this, and I think that is my main takeaway, my main opinion, my take on this. It's not a hot take, it's just a take, a considered take. I try not to do hot takes. Lukewarm at best, most of my takes. But my lukewarm take on this is that I think if you're going to write a fantasy book with elements of Welsh culture, or the Welsh language, or Welsh mythology, be respectful of it. Be aware that Welsh mythology is very in-depth. Be aware that Welsh mythology is thousands of years old. It's well over 1,000 years old, certainly. Be aware that it is intrinsically connected with a living language that is very important to those who experience it and speak it, and it is part of a living culture that is a very important part of the culture and history of the rock that it's from. Be aware that Wales is not a fantasy, purely countryside land where people with flowing locks play harps on mountaintops. Be aware that Wales is a place where there are council estates full of kids who don't see their family and their godparents and their aunties and uncles very often, and when they do, they're either drunk or try and give them too much money and it insults their families. Be aware that Welsh people like the rugby. Be aware of all of this stuff, right? You know, if you're going to take inspiration from Wales, that's amazing, but if you're going to try and shoehorn Wales or pan-Celticism into your book, it's going to be noticed, and we're going to take exception to that because we don't like it. Nobody likes to be misrepresented, nobody likes their culture to be misappropriated or used in a harmful way. And it can be harmful because it gives people a false image of us. And many of us, myself included, were lucky enough to be brought up with a chwedlau, with the myths and legends, with Bendigeidfran and Branwen and Rhys y Meinir, and we went to places with Urdd Gobaith Cymru, and we went to Eisteddfodau and learnt about Cynghanedd, and we learnt about the poetic tradition, and we learnt about Arthur, and we learnt what the names of all the mountains mean and the stories and myths that they allude to. But many children in Wales haven't had that privilege, and many people, not just in Wales but in other cultures and other places, will read fantasy books and think that's what the culture is, because that's their only source. And there really isn't much excuse for that in this day and age. Many of you are watching this on a mobile phone that gives you the sum total of human knowledge at the touch of a screen. So, you know, you could go on r/Cymraeg or r/Welsh, and you could ask about Welsh language and mythology and culture. If you're a writer who's thinking of writing a fantasy novel with Welsh elements in it, do a sensitivity read. Get somebody like me who speaks Welsh, and I do speak yr iaith Gymraeg every day. I use it and I write in it and I speak in it every single day. Get somebody like me to do a sensitivity check on it, because a lot of people don't. And I think it's is it a court of thorns and roses? I think it's a court of thorns and roses, isn't it? Is apparently the latest book that is notoriously not really doing a great job of differentiating between the Celtic cultures. And we're not a monolith. We're not one homogeneous or homogeneous blob. It's not true. It's not a thing. Irish people don't use the Mari Lwyd, for example. Like, come on. You know, people in North Wales don't really do it that much as a tradition. We're not all the same. Gaelic and Gaeleg and Cymraeg are not all the same language. So get somebody to read your novel. Please get somebody to do a sensitivity read. I've just finished a sensitivity read on a novel that required almost no sensitivity reading because the author had done their homework and had looked into the language. And okay, they'd mostly used Google Translate, but they checked it a few times with dictionaries and grammars, and then asked a Welsh speaker to check the book to make sure that they'd got it right. And they had. And that's all you really need to do. But, you know, whacking Rhys and Tamlin and Morrigan into a story it will jar. It's like, okay, they're doing that, are they? Like, ooh, boy. You know, it's like, it's nice to see names that you recognise from your culture, but when they're clearly misunderstood, and when the legends and myths are clearly just being shoehorned in for the sake of making something fantasy-ish, it's disappointing. It really, really is. Like, the Fae and the Fair Folk and the Tylwyth Teg, Terry Pratchett takes inspiration from Welsh myths and legends based around the fairies, but makes it his own, and doesn't just call everybody, like, a Welsh name. Like, you know, everybody isn't just, like, Blodwen and Rhiannon and Rhys and Glyn and Dewi. You know, you try and find it, you won't, but it's still clearly, if you dig into it, written with inspiration from Welsh myths and legends. Same goes with Tolkien, you know. They're clearly inspired by Welsh myths and legends in the structuring of some of the stories. Like some of the myths and stories of the elves read like Welsh mythology, but they're not just nicked wholesale. That's lazy writing. If you've written a novel where you've just nicked stuff from Welsh culture, or Irish, or Gaelic, or Manx, or Breton, or whatever it may be, you've just written a lazy book. I'm sorry, but you've written a lazy book and I'm not going to enjoy reading it. I do get people sending me work sometimes, and they're like, do you like this story? It's inspired by Wales. And I'm like, well, you've just used 2 Welsh names in your romance story that happen to be Welsh. You happen to have just written people, like, banging in a cave, but they've got Welsh names. So no, not really. Like, it's, there's more to it than that. So my hot take on this is be respectful, I guess. It's not a very hot take, like I said, but just be respectful. If you're going to take a culture and a storytelling tradition that has been active, that has been alive and developing for the better part of 2,000 years, show it some respect. Like, show my language and culture some respect. There's 500,000 people speak my language in Wales, and more around the globe. And we're always happy to see it represented. We're not happy to see it misrepresented. There are Highlanders and Islanders. There are people in the Gaeltacht in Scotland who are very, very happy to see Gaelic and to see their culture represented in media. But they don't, you only have to sniff Outlander to see misrepresentation of a minority culture writ large, and it's gross to see it. How many people paint themselves green and call it Patty's Day? How many people wished me a happy Samhain? In any of the languages in which I'm fluent, Samhain is not a word. Samhain is not a Welsh word. So, happy Calan Gaeaf to you, but just be cool with it. Just be respectful, and you don't have to make it performative. Like, it's nice when people are trying to learn a bit of Welsh and speak a bit of Welsh, but don't shoehorn my living, breathing, active, and yet also ancient culture into your fantasy novel. My country is not a fantasy novel. My country is not a fantasy land. Yes, we've given you King Arthur. Yes, we've given you the Mabinogion. Yes, it is a wonderful place. It is a beautiful place. It is the place that I love most in the world. But Wales is not a fantasy land. So don't try and make it one. Okay, full disclosure, I've tried to film this 3 times and try and come up with like an Act 3 where I give you my actual hot takeaway on this subject. But it is literally just be respectful of my culture, be respectful of my language. Don't try and make my country into a fantasy land that it's not. Like, we've got inherent magic in the landscape. We've got places named for Arthur, and we've got places named for Dwynwen and Bendigeidfran and Gwenllian. We've got that, but it is a country with a culture. So just be cool, be respectful. Like, that's it. That's taken me like 2.5 hours to come up with that. Be respectful. That's all I got on this. That's literally it. So yeah, if you're writing a fantasy novel, get a sensitivity reader on. If you're worried that you've got names wrong, or that you are pan-Celticizing and you're just lumping cultures together, ask people from those cultures. It is that easy. Ask somebody from those cultures who is versed in those cultures and their nuances, because it's not hard in this day and age. There's no excuse not to. Okay, so that is my hot take. If you are watching this and you're thinking, oh no, what have I done? I haven't done any of that. Do it. Just get it done. In the next draft, you can fix it all. It's fine. And if your book's already been published and you're getting backlash, apologise and rewrite it. It's not a child, it's a book. You can rewrite it if you want. Okay? Dickens and Conan Doyle and Shakespeare all redrafted and rewrote stuff, so just do it. I'm going to go and eat some burgers and probably listen to Jeff Wayne's musical version of The War of the Worlds. Alright. Diolch yn fawr iawn am wylio. Dwi yn gobeithio fod pawb wedi mwynhau'r fideo. Thank you for watching. I hope that everybody's enjoyed the video. I really do. If you want to support the channel, obviously we've got the Patreon link. We've got the Coffee link in the description. Yeah. Take it easy. Keep ar y deg. And, as ever, tan y tro nesa, till the next time, hwyl am y tro. Bye for now.
Return.